So let's look at what the Bible says tonight about witnessing and how we're to witness even to the most difficult ones. Proverbs chapter 9, beginning of verse 7 here. Just a few verses from Proverbs 9 and beginning of verse 7. It says here, he that reproveth the scorner getteth to himself shame. And he that rebuketh, now we're talking about witnessing here, rebuketh a wicked man getteth himself a blot. In other words, this is not something you should be doing here in witnessing. Then verse 8 it says, reprove not a scorner, lest he hate thee. Rebuke a wise man, and he will love thee. See the difference there? When you're talking to lost people, verse 6 and verse 7, the first half of verse 7 is talking about, or verse 8 rather, is talking about witnessing to people. The right way to do it, the rebuke, the ones that are fools and the ones that are scorners, be careful. Deal with them the right way. All right, now let's turn to Galatians chapter number 5 and verse 22. And some of you know already what this involves. Galatians chapter 5, verse 22. Could you turn that light on? Let me shine here. It'll help me tonight. I need the lights. Oh, Marilyn knows I have to. Marilyn does that. Okay, that good. Thank you. That helps. Thank you. Galatians chapter 5, verse 22. It says there, but the fruit of the Spirit. Now, as Christians, we're to always exhibit the fruit of the Spirit, even when we're witnessing. Now, what is the fruit of the Spirit? But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith. And by the way, I think a few of these words you're going to hear used more than once here. Those will be some of the ones I'll be talking about tonight. So gentleness, goodness, faith, in verse 23. Meekness, that's coming up again. Temperance, against such there is no law. And so it talks about the fruit of the Spirit. We have this fruit of the Spirit. We ought to show that, express it all the time, even when we're witnessing to people. Even when we're witnessing. Now let's turn also to Galatians chapter 6, verse 1. Galatians chapter 6 now, verse 1. Now this is talking about dealing with our Christian brethren, but also gives some of the same warnings and some of the same instructions about how to deal with even a Christian brethren too. Galatians 6, verse 1 says, brethren, if a man be overtaken in a fault, ye which are spiritual. That's a big problem there. Some people are not spiritual, but they think they are. But ye which are spiritual, restore such a one in the spirit of, there's that word again, meekness. In the spirit of meekness, considering thyself, consider yourself, lest thou also be tempted. Then it goes on in verse 2, bear ye one another's burdens, and so fulfill the law of Christ. For if a man think himself to be something when he is nothing, he's deceiving himself. He's deceiving himself. But let a man prove his own work, and then shall he have rejoicing in himself alone and not in another. But back to verse 1. Brethren, if a man be overtaken in fault, you which are spiritual, restore such a one in the spirit of meekness. Now let's turn to 2 Timothy. Now let's turn to 2 Timothy chapter 2 for the main verses for tonight. Again, how to deal with lost people, how to witness to people, what attitude they have, what actions to take, how we should handle that. 2 Timothy chapter 2 at verse 22. It says here, flee also youthful lusts, and follow righteousness. I'm talking about Christians here. Follow righteousness, faith, charity, follow charity, peace, with them that call on the Lord out of pure heart. But foolish and unlearned questions avoid, knowing that they do gender strifes. Right. Be careful when you're talking to somebody, witnessing to somebody, and it starts to turn into an argument. Be careful of that. Don't let that happen. Knowing that they do gender strifes. Foolish questions, unlearned questions, things that really don't make sense even, and don't react the wrong way, Christian. You understand this? Now verse 24. And the servant of the Lord must not strive Must not strive, but be gentle. That's a good word. Unto all men. Gentle unto all men. Apt to teach. We'll talk about what that means here in a few minutes too. Patient. Do I really need to explain what patience means? I think everybody here knows what it means. I think everybody here knows when they're patient. I think everybody here knows when they're not patient. Apt to teach, patient, giving a long time, longer than we would want sometimes. And then now verse 25, there's that word again, meekness. In meekness instructing those that oppose themselves. Now there's our two words, opposing themselves. If God peradventure will give them repentance to the acknowledging the truth, and that they may recover themselves out of the snare of the devil. This area here, these people that are involved in it, understand they're being misled by their own pride. That's one area, one way to be misled. But they're also being misled by this character who works behind the scenes and knows pretty much what he's doing, the devil. So be careful that you don't use yourself as a Christian, that they may recover themselves out of the snare of the devil, who are taken captive by him and his will. These people that are taken captive by the devil. How does that happen? How do they know when that's happening? Well, you don't need to know. Just do what the Bible says. You don't have to worry about that at all. But they're lost. They're not saved. And how are they to be dealt with, even if it's as strong as this is, being taken captive by the devil himself? Whenever the devil wants to do it, he can do that at his will. He has his will. Let's talk about some of these things tonight now. First of all, the opposing themselves. Like I said, I looked up that little phrase there, and someone also just skipped over that. Please didn't talk about it. Obviously, it seems like it's saying that word, people oppose themselves, but it's a little more than that. It's opposing God, and by opposing God, they're opposing themselves. Because they're going opposite of what is best for them. That's a little more confusing than the original thought I had about it, but that's mainly what I'm getting as I read all the different commentaries. It says they're opposing themselves to God. They're standing against God. They are taking a stand against God. They're opposing themselves against God. That's what these kind of people are doing. They stand in opposition to God. They don't believe in creation. They believe in evolution.